Let's talk about what is affecting every person in the US today, the inflation. The inflation has gone up by 8.5% in March compared to February, which was around 7.9%. The highest inflation ever recorded was in 1981, 41 years back. That is crazy. To make matters worse, energy prices increased by around 32%, namely gasoline 48%, fuel oil 70.1%. This is as a direct result of the Russian war in Ukraine, which has pushed up the prices of crude oil. Also, food prices have jumped to 8.8%, the most since May 1981. Now, if you think this is terrible, the inflation on shelters went from 5% in March compared to 4.7% in February. Prices for new vehicles went up to 12.5% compared to 12.4% in February. Also, food prices have jumped up by 8.8%, the most since May 1981. Now, if you think this is terrible, listen to this. The inflation on shelters has moved up from 4.7% in February to 5% last month. Prices for new vehicles went up to 12.5% compared to 12.4% in February this year. The good news is that used cars and trucks, their prices went down from 41.2% to 35.5%, a difference of around 5.7%. So to bring things into context, here is an interview with the former Dallas Fed president, Richard Fisher's take on the current situation in the US. Let's take a look.
The two-day Fed meeting kicks off today. For a look at what might be ahead, let's bring in former Dallas Fed President Richard Fisher. He's now senior advisor to Barclays, and he serves on the board of Tenet Healthcare. He's also a CNBC contributor. Richard, let's take a look at what's happening. The 10-year pushing above 3% yesterday for the first time since 2018. Market knows that the Fed's going to be moving pretty aggressively. Do you think there is more that they will hear tomorrow that will surprise them, or do you think they've kind of figured out where the Fed is?
Well, I think the thing people are waiting for is to see how they plan to trim the portfolio, particularly mortgage backs, because the mortgage-backed portfolio that they hold is long, 10 years and longer. And the real question is, will they have to depart from precedent and actually sell a security? So that's, I think, could be an unknown. We'll see. But they've got to lay out more specifics in terms of trimming the portfolio, in addition to whatever announcement they come out with, 50 basis points. We won't see much of a chart going forward, but I think the tone will be aggressive because inflation is a serious problem.
You think the tone will be more aggressive than the March minutes kind of indicated, that we could be getting up to a pare down rate of $95 billion a month and that it could start this month?
I don't think that. I think the trim part of it, that is the portfolio reduction or titration, is already pretty clear what the numbers are. The question is the timing, the speed. But again, the mortgage-backed security, it's easy to let, they've almost got $2 trillion in relatively short-term treasuries that they can let leak out at a determined pace that they've already announced. But mortgage-backed securities, they're all bunched up 10 years and longer. There's a little less than, I think, $2 billion in short-term mortgage-backed securities maturing. So that's the key. We'll have to see. But I don't expect any surprises on the interest rate front. I think that's already been telegraphed. I served under 3 Fed chairmen. No one has been as open and direct and telescoping and transparent as Jay Powell. So we know what they're going to do on the interest rate front. The question is, what might they do in the future? What are they going to indicate? And then what happens with trimming a portfolio? What specifics we can get?
So the truth be told, as long as the war in Ukraine continues, the inflation will just continue going up, which will cause supply chain bottlenecks to persist, which in turn affects every household in the US. Everyone will feel that inflation in their pockets. So what's in for you and moi? We need to watch how we spend. We need to cut back on unnecessary spending until this storm passes. Here are some tips that you can do, especially right now, to manage high prices. 1, review your budget. You can make some changes or shift around your budget if you have the ability to. This may mean cutting back or changing habits a little bit. For example, instead of buying $175 worth of grocery, you may have to cut it down to $150. Tip number 2, you may have to scale down on eating out, driving, and vacations. For example, if you have some special event like a trip or wedding, it is better to plan ahead to avoid high ticket prices when you buy them when you're in a rush. Another is try to cook than spend on eating out. Here is what Kroger's CEO says about consumer habits.
The market is telling us that there is some concern about this ugly mix of higher inflation and higher interest rates. Are you seeing any change from the consumer right now?
We're seeing a little bit with consumers starting to buy more of our own brand product, especially with certain customer groups. But we still see people upscaling their purchase. You know, during COVID, people have learned how to cook, as we've talked about before. And people continue to like the premium products when you look at cheese, better wines, some of those things. So it's, for the most part, not a lot of changes. Customers on a budget, you're starting to see them starting to switch a little bit to our brands, a little bit smaller basket size, but they're coming in more often now. Part of that could be COVID driven as well.
Are you expecting a wider consumer slowdown here?
Say that.
Are you expecting a bigger consumer slowdown?
So far, we don't. We just think customers really are trying to make sure they stretch their budget. And one of the things that we try to do is to make sure that we use our data and our understanding of customers, helping them to see promotions that apply to them to be able to help stretch their budget.
What about food inflation? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better?
It's still getting worse. And if you look at PPI, there's still more likelihood, some more pain to come. And if you just look at raw ingredients in terms of corn, soybean, wheat, all of those things, it still appears there's more to come. And we're going to do everything we can to minimize the impact on customers.
Tip number 3. If you have any credit card debt, listen carefully. If you do have a credit card debt, it is better that you try to pay it down. If you have any credit card debt, it is best at this time to think about paying down on the debt due to the rising interest rate. Despite the rising cost of living, you should not lose hope. As long as you have breath in you, don't lose hope. I will leave you with this amazing quote by Martin Luther King Jr. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. If you have not yet subscribed to our channel, please do so. This will mean a lot to us. And also, please press the like button. In this way, YouTube will be able to recommend this information to other people that may be in need of it. Until next time, salute.